If you're about to sign for a new Ute in Australia, stop scrolling and watch this first, because somewhere on this list is probably the exact model sitting in your driveway right now, or the one you're about to drive off the lot this weekend. We've gone through dealer complaints, service bay horror stories, resale reports, and thousands of owner reviews to rank 12 Utes that Australians are furious they bought in 2026. Some of them are just disappointing, the kind of Ute that leaves you a little flatter every time you turn the key. Some of them will genuinely drain your bank account, one repair bill at a time. And one, right at the very top of this list, is an absolute disaster on wheels. The kind of vehicle that has owners walking away from finance contracts just to be free of it. So buckle up, because this one gets rough. Australians buy more Utes per person than almost anywhere else on the planet. It is not just a vehicle here, it is a lifestyle choice, a status symbol, a workhorse. And for a lot of families, the only car they will ever own. That is exactly why the regret hits so hard when things go wrong. People do not just lose a car. They lose the tool they built their working week around, the thing they towed the boat with, the thing they were going to hand down to their kid one day. When that trust breaks, word travels fast, especially in a market where everyone seems to have a mate who drives the same thing. Every entry on this list was chosen because the same complaints kept showing up again and again, from different owners in different states, driving completely different daily lives. That repetition is what separates a genuine pattern from a one-off bad experience, and it is exactly what we looked for while putting this ranking together, cross-checking owner forms against dealer, complaint records and independent workshop reports wherever we could find them. We are not interested in a single angry review from someone who never changed their oil. We are interested in the vehicles where mechanics, dealers, and everyday owners all seem to be describing the same frustrating story. So let's get into it. Number 12 on our list is not catastrophic, not yet, but it is annoying enough that plenty of owners say they would not buy it again. Starting at number 12, we have a Ute that looked fantastic on paper. Strong power figures, a sharp new design, a factory warranty that sounded generous at the time of signing. The problem is not the big stuff, it is the small stuff that keeps piling up. Owners are reporting recurring infotainment glitches, screens freezing mid-drive, reversing cameras that cut out at the worst possible moment, and a Bluetooth system that seems to forget every paired phone every second week. None of this stops the Ute from getting you to work. None of it strands you on the side of the highway. But it chips away at confidence, service after service, until owners start wondering what else is quietly going wrong that they simply cannot see yet. Dealers have acknowledged the software issues, updates have rolled out, but plenty of buyers say the fixes only partially work. And a second, then third visit back to the workshop is enough to sour anyone on a brand new purchase. It is a mild regret, but a regret all the same, and it is exactly the kind of thing a buyer researching this Ute today deserves to know before they sign anything. What makes it frustrating rather than dangerous is the unpredictability. Some owners report 0 issues after 3 years, while others are booking in a 4th software update before their first birthday with the vehicle. And salespeople rarely mention any of this at the point of sale, understandably, because from their side of the desk, it looks like a minor teething issue rather than a pattern worth flagging to a nervous first-time buyer. Moving up to number 11, and this one is a case of a manufacturer chasing efficiency at the cost of everyday drivability. The engine downsized from a larger, more relaxed unit to a smaller turbocharged setup, and on paper the fuel figures improved. In the real world, especially loaded up with tools, a canopy, and a trailer behind it, owners say the engine feels strained, working harder than it should, and burning more fuel than the brochure ever promised. Turbo lag off the mark is a common complaint, particularly at low speeds around town, which is exactly where most of these Utes actually spend their lives despite the rugged marketing. Add in a transmission that some owners describe as hunting between gears on hills, and you get a driving experience that feels like a step backwards from the model it replaced. It still does the job. It still tows, it still carries, it still gets tradies to site every morning. But for buyers who upgraded expecting a smoother, more modern experience, plenty walked away feeling like they paid more for less. Some owners have taken to fitting aftermarket tunes or exhaust modifications in an attempt to claw back the low-end responsiveness the old engine used to offer standard, an extra cost nobody budgeted for when they signed the finance paperwork. It is a reminder that smaller and more efficient does not always translate into better once real-world towing and load carrying enters the equation. Number 10 brings us to a Ute that has struggled with a very specific and very expensive problem, the diesel particulate filter. For anyone unfamiliar, this is the component responsible for trapping soot from the exhaust, and it needs regular high-temperature drives to burn itself clean. Utes that spend most of their life doing short trips around the suburbs, school runs, quick trips, to the hardware store rarely get hot enough for long enough to clear it properly. The result, according to a growing number of owner reports, is warning lights, reduced power modes, and in some cases, filters that need replacing well before they should, at a cost that can run into thousands of dollars. This is not entirely the manufacturer's fault. Plenty of it comes down to how the vehicle is actually used versus how it was designed to be used. But when a dealer sells a family a diesel ute as an everyday, do-it-all vehicle and does not clearly explain the DPF maintenance routine, the blame understandably lands on the brand when the warning light appears and the repair quote arrives. Some owners only discover the correct fix, a deliberate 20-minute highway drive every couple of weeks after they have already paid for one expensive clean or replacement, which naturally leaves them feeling like the dealership set them up to fail rather than warn them in advance. A little more honesty at the point of sale would have saved a lot of owners a lot of money and a lot of frustration. At number 9, we have a Ute, where the complaints center almost entirely around resale value, and for anyone who bought new, that sting is very real. This model came in with a lot of hype, an aggressive launch price, and genuinely competitive specifications when it first arrived on Australian roads. The problem is that newer, more established rivals responded quickly, price competition intensified, and second-hand values for this Ute have fallen faster than almost anything else in its class. Owners who financed their purchase are now finding themselves upside down on their loans, owing more than the vehicle is currently worth on the used market. It still drives fine. It still does what it says on the box. But for a lot of buyers, a Ute is not just a tool, it is also meant to be a reasonably safe financial decision, something you can sell in 3 or 4 years without losing your shirt. This one has broken that unwritten promise for a lot of owners, and that kind of regret does not show up on day one. It shows up 18 months later when you try to trade it in. Dealers know this too, which is exactly why trade-in offers on this model have reportedly come in well below what owners expected based on similar aged rivals, leaving buyers with the uncomfortable choice of accepting a loss or holding onto a Ute they had already mentally moved on from. It is a slow-burning kind of regret, the sort that creeps up on you months after the new car smell has faded. Number 8 is where things start to get a bit more serious, because now we are talking about a genuine mechanical pattern rather than an annoyance. This Ute has developed a reputation among mechanics for premature wear, in its rear differential and bearing assemblies, particularly on examples that have towed regularly or been used off-road. Owners are reporting unusual noises, developing well within the standard warranty period, sometimes as early as 20 or 30,000 kilometers, which for a vehicle marketed heavily on toughness and durability is a genuinely disappointing outcome. Warranty claims have been approved in plenty of cases, which is a point in the manufacturer's favor, but the amount of time some owners have spent without their vehicle, waiting on parts that need to be shipped from overseas, has become its own separate frustration. A Ute sitting in a workshop for 3 or 4 weeks is a Ute that is not earning money for a tradie, and that lost income rarely gets factored into any warranty conversation. A handful of owners have pushed back and negotiated loan vehicles for the duration of the repair, but plenty more say they simply were not offered that option and had to hire a replacement out of their own pocket while waiting on a part that, in one owner's case, took closer to 6 weeks than the promised 10 days. At number 7, we land on one of the big American-style Utes that Australia fell in love with a few years back, only for that love affair to cool considerably. Sales figures for this segment have actually fallen sharply over the past year, and it is not hard to see why when you talk to the people who bought early examples. This particular model has been affected by stop sale actions in the past related to technical issues, and while the manufacturer says those problems have since been resolved on newer production runs, plenty of original buyers are left holding vehicles that were, for a period, simply not allowed to be sold as new stock. Parts availability has been another sore point, since these vehicles are converted from left-hand drive to right-hand drive here in Australia, which means specialist components are not always sitting on a shelf at your local dealer. When something breaks that is specific to the conversion process, owners report waiting considerably longer than they would with a mainstream Japanese or Korean Ute, and in a country this size, being without a work vehicle for weeks at a time is not a minor inconvenience. Regional buyers have it worst of all, since the specialist workshops capable of handling these conversions tend to be clustered around capital cities, meaning a farmer or contractor several hours from the nearest dealer can lose an entire week just getting the vehicle assessed before any repair work even begins. Number 6 takes us to a competitor in that same oversized American segment, a vehicle that arrived with huge fanfare, big power figures, and a price tag to match. Unfortunately, its local sales results tell their own story, with delivery numbers coming in well below what the manufacturer clearly hoped for when they committed to bringing it to right-hand drive markets. Owners who did take the plunge are reporting a familiar set of frustrations, long wait times for servicing it. The handful of dealers equipped to handle these vehicles properly, fuel consumption figures that are genuinely brutal around town, and a resale market that simply is not deep enough to guarantee a quick or profitable sale down the track. It is an impressive vehicle in a straight line and an impressive vehicle for towing. Nobody is arguing that. But as a day-to-day proposition for the average Australian buyer, plenty of owners now admit they underestimated just how niche and how expensive that ownership experience would turn out to be. Insurance premiums have surprised more than a few new owners as well, with some quotes coming in noticeably higher than for equivalent mainstream Utes simply because of the vehicle's size, replacement parts cost, and lower registration numbers on Australian roads, which insurers factor directly into their risk pricing. At number 5, we start moving into genuinely costly territory, with a Ute whose transmission has become the subject of widespread owner frustration. This model uses a dual clutch style automatic that, when it works properly, is smooth and quick shifting. The trouble is a pattern of reported issues including jerky low speed engagement, hesitation when pulling away from a standstill, and in a smaller but still significant number of cases, complete transmission failures requiring full replacement. Because this transmission is shared across several models in the manufacturer's range, forums and owner groups have compared notes extensively, and the consensus among a lot of frustrated buyers is that the issue is a known design limitation rather than a handful of unlucky examples. Manufacturers have issued software updates aimed at smoothing out the shift behavior, and some owners say it genuinely helped, while others say the fundamental jerkiness never fully went away no matter how many updates were installed. For a vehicle bought specifically to tow heavy loads, a transmission that hesitates or shudders under load is not a small complaint. It goes right to the core of what a Ute is meant to do. Owner group surveys circulating online suggest the issue affects a meaningful minority rather than every single vehicle, which makes it genuinely hard for a new buyer to know in advance whether they are about to get a smooth example or a shuddering one, and that uncertainty alone is enough to put plenty of cautious shoppers off entirely. Number 4 brings us to a newer arrival on the Australian market, a plug-in hybrid Ute that generated enormous excitement when it launched, promising diesel-level towing capability alongside genuinely impressive fuel economy for daily driving. The concept is brilliant, and plenty of owners who use it exactly as intended are very happy with their purchase. But a portion of very early deliveries have reportedly arrived with components missing or not fully finished, and rather than wait for replacement stock, some customers chose to take delivery anyway and sort the missing pieces out later through the dealer network. That is not the kind of story you want circulating about a brand new vehicle that costs tens of thousands of dollars, and it has understandably shaken confidence among cautious buyers who were already unsure about newer manufacturers entering this incredibly competitive segment. Add in a still developing dealer and service network compared to the decades-old infrastructure that Toyota and Ford enjoy across regional Australia, and you have a genuinely talented vehicle let down by growing pains that early adopters are paying the price for. Battery and hybrid system diagnostics also require specially trained technicians, and outside the major metro areas, those technicians can be genuinely thin on the ground, meaning a fault that would take an afternoon at a long-established dealer can turn into a multi-day wait simply because the right specialist has not been rostered on that week. At number 3, we reach a Ute that has become something of a case study in what happens when a manufacturer changes a beloved formula too aggressively. The previous generation of this vehicle built a loyal following on the strength of a big, characterful V8 engine, the kind of engine owners genuinely bonded with. The replacement model swapped that engine out for a smaller, more efficient turbocharged unit that, on every published spec sheet, is objectively better, more power, more torque, better fuel economy. And yet the backlash from existing fans has been loud and sustained, with owners saying the new engine simply does not deliver the same character, the same soundtrack, or in real-world towing situations, the same confident low-end grunt they were used to. Resale values for the outgoing V8 models have actually held up better than the new engine, which tells you everything about how the market has voted with its wallet. For buyers who purchased the new model expecting an upgrade in every sense, plenty say it feels like a downgrade in the one area that mattered most to them. It is a genuinely fascinating case for anyone studying how brand loyalty actually works, because the complaints here are not really about performance figures at all. They are about identity and feel, about the sound an engine makes when you plant your foot at the boat ramp, and no amount of clever turbocharging seems able to fully replace that for the buyers who miss it most. Number 2 takes us into territory where the complaints stop being about comfort or convenience and start being about genuine reliability at a scale that is hard to ignore. This particular Ute has developed a well-documented pattern of turbocharger failures, occurring across a wide enough range of build dates and mileage figures that it cannot easily be written off as a handful of isolated cases. Symptoms reported by owners include a noticeable loss of power, unusual whining noises under acceleration, and in more serious instances, complete turbo failure that leaves the vehicle undrivable and requires a tow to the nearest dealer, which in regional Australia can mean a very long and very expensive wait. Warranty coverage has helped many affected owners avoid the full repair bill, which regularly runs into several $1,000s when it does happen outside of warranty. But the emotional cost of buying a vehicle specifically because it was marketed as tough, reliable, and built for Australian conditions, only to have it fail in exactly the way it was never supposed to, is something owner reviews keep coming back to again and again. Trust, once broken this badly, does not come back easily, no matter how good the eventual fix turns out to be. A number of owners have described a lingering sense of anxiety every time they hear a new noise from under the bonnet, second-guessing sounds that would never have registered before their turbo failed the first time. And that kind of quiet, ongoing stress rarely shows up in a satisfaction survey, but comes through loud and clear in long-form owner reviews. And that brings us to number 1, the Ute, that Australians regret buying more than any other in 2026. And the reason we called this one catastrophic rather than simply bad. This vehicle combines almost every problem we have already talked about into a single ownership experience. Mechanical faults appearing well before they reasonably should, a dealer network struggling under the weight of warranty claims and parts shortages, resale values that have collapsed even faster than its most troubled rivals, and a pattern of complaints serious enough that some owners have reported multiple breakdowns within the first 12 months of ownership. We are talking about engines requiring full replacement under warranty, transmissions that fail without warning, and electrical gremlins that seem to defy diagnosis no matter how many times the vehicle goes back to the workshop. For tradies who rely on their Ute to earn a living, being without a working vehicle for weeks at a stretch, sometimes more than once in the same year, has pushed a genuinely alarming number of owners to explore their legal options, including lemon laws and formal complaints through consumer protection bodies. Some have successfully negotiated buybacks or replacement vehicles after months of persistence. Others are still fighting for a resolution as this video goes live, stuck in a frustrating back and forth between dealer, manufacturer, and consumer affairs. Either way, the online forums dedicated to this model read less like an enthusiast community and more like a support group, owners sharing repair histories, comparing notes on which dealer is least likely to make excuses, and warning newcomers away from a purchase they themselves deeply regret. One recurring theme worth flagging is how differently individual dealers within the same network have handled these complaints, with some going above and beyond to keep customers on side, offering loan cars and expedited parts orders, while others have reportedly left owners feeling stonewalled and dismissed at exactly the moment they needed support the most, which suggests part of this catastrophe comes down to inconsistent customer care, rather than the mechanical problems alone. So what do you actually do with all of this if you're in the market for a new Ute right now? First, do not buy on badge loyalty alone. Just because a brand has decades of goodwill in Australia does not mean every single model they release carries the same reliability. Sometimes a completely new engine or transmission genuinely is a bigger gamble than the outgoing version, even if the marketing tells you otherwise. Second, spend real time on owner forums and independent review channels before you sign anything. Dealership brochures are never going to tell you about a known transmission issue or a pattern of turbo failures, but real owners absolutely will. And that information is sitting online for free if you take the time to look for it. Third, if you're buying something new to the market, whether that is a new plug-in hybrid or a freshly converted right-hand drive American Ute, understand that you are taking on early adopter risk in exchange for being first. And that risk is real, not theoretical, as several vehicles on this list have proven. Fourth, always factor resale value into your decision from day one, not as an afterthought 3 years later when you're trying to trade in and discovering the market has moved against you. A Ute that costs a little more upfront but holds its value can end up cheaper overall than a bargain-priced model that collapses in value the moment it drives off the lot. Fifth, get a genuinely independent pre-purchase inspection even on a brand new vehicle if the option is available, because a qualified mechanic looking at the specific build date and known service bulletins for your exact model can sometimes catch a problem before it becomes your problem, rather than after you have already signed the finance contract and driven it home. Sixth, do not be afraid to ask the salesperson pointed, specific questions about known issues, because while they will not always volunteer the information, plenty are required to disclose recalls and service campaigns if you ask directly. And a good dealer would rather answer an awkward question up front than lose your trust 6 months down the track. Seventh, remember that extended warranties and service plans are negotiable, and on any model with a known pattern of issues like the ones we have covered today, pushing for extra cover at the point of sale can end up saving you thousands if the worst does happen once the standard factory warranty runs out. At the end of the day, a ute is one of the biggest financial commitments most Australians will make outside of a house, and it deserves the same level of research and caution that you would put into buying property. The 12 vehicles on this list are not necessarily bad in every single example. Plenty of owners of even the worst entries here have had trouble-free experiences, and manufacturers do genuinely work to fix known issues once they become widespread enough to notice. But patterns matter, and when enough owners report the same problem across enough different examples, that pattern becomes information you deserve to have before you commit tens of thousands of dollars and years of your life to a single vehicle. If this list saved you from making a decision you would have regretted, or if you are nodding along because you already own one of these and know exactly what we are talking about, let us know down in the comments which entry surprised you the most and which ute you think deserves an honorable mention that did not quite make the cut this time around. We read every single comment on these videos, and honestly, some of the most useful information that ends up in future rankings comes directly from viewers sharing their own ownership stories, the good and the bad. So do not be shy about adding yours to the conversation below. It is also worth saying clearly that none of this is about telling you never to buy a ute, or that Australian roads are suddenly full of unreliable vehicles. The vast majority of utes sold in this country every single year do exactly what they are supposed to do, quietly and reliably, for years on end, without ever making it onto a list like this one. The vehicles we have covered today stood out precisely because they broke that pattern in a way that enough owners noticed and spoke up about. A little healthy skepticism before you sign on the dotted line is not pessimism. It is just good sense, the same kind of due diligence you would apply to any major purchase. And it is the exact same approach that has kept plenty of buyers happy with vehicles that never had a chance of appearing in a video like this. Do your research, read beyond the glossy brochure, talk to actual owners rather than just the salesperson across the desk, and you give yourself the best possible chance of avoiding the kind of regret we have spent the last several minutes unpacking together. Before you go, if you found this ranking useful, consider subscribing for more honest, no-nonsense breakdowns of the Australian car market, because we'll be back soon with more rankings, covering everything from family SUVs to the best and worst tow vehicles for caravans heading into the next holiday season. Drop a like if you made it all the way to the end. It genuinely helps more people find videos like this one instead of glossy manufacturer marketing dressed up as an honest review. Thanks again for watching, drive safe out there, and we will catch you in the next one.